It's early morning in Victorian London. The two unassuming gentlemen of 221B Baker Street, gathered in their cozy living room, are rifling through the back pages of the crime stories littered in the newspaper. "My dear fellow," says Sherlock Holmes to his companion Dr. Watson, "life is infinitely stranger than anything which the mind of man could invent. We would not dare to conceive the things which are really mere commonplaces of existence. If we could fly out of that window hand in hand, hover over this great city, gently remove the roofs and peep in at the queer things which are going on, the strange coincidences, the plannings, the cross purposes, the wonderful chains of events working through generations and leading to the most outre results, it would make all fiction with its conventionalities and foreseen conclusions most stale and unprofitable." So begins one of Holmes's relatively unknown mysteries. Written by Conan Doyle in 1891 and published by the Strand magazine as part of the first volume of Sherlock's adventures, which came out the next year, A Case of Identity was one of the short stories lost in the furore of the other sensational Holmesian tales. As the story begins in the living room of Baker Street, amidst a discussion between Sherlock and Watson about the nature of the criminal element now inhabiting the gaslit London streets, it is quickly interrupted by the entry of a new client, a rather hesitant and anxious Mrs. Mary Sutherland of number 31 Leon Place, Camberwell. Miss Sutherland is from a posh family. Her father is dead, but her mother has married a Mr. James Windybanks, a man only 5 years older than her, and because of a connection to her uncle Ned in Auckland, who has left her a good amount of money for her own expenses, she has had enough monetarily to sustain her own lifestyle. Sherlock also notes that Miss Sutherland is a typewritist, an acute observation made the moment she walks in, on the basis of a double-lined impression visible on her wrist where she must have been leaning on a table, and the fact that her nose has a pinched tint on either side, indicating that she probably wears glasses. She is stunned by Sherlock's accurate prediction and reveals that her typewriting is also another way for her to earn money. All in all, Sherlock surmises on the spot that Miss Sutherland is quite a capable woman and one who could take care not only of herself but her family as well. Unfortunately, she says, capable as she is, lately she has been getting frustrated at the lack of her social life and the fact that she too wanted to start a family of her own. But her stepfather, Mr. Windybanks, disapproved of the notion no matter how much she desired meeting someone. So, during one of his work-related visits to Paris, she and her mother go out to the gasfitters' ball, and it's there that the elusive and alluring Mr. Hosmer Angel comes into her life. A love affair blossoms between the pair, but one shrouded in secrecy, and from their initial meeting onwards, Miss Sutherland starts going out on evening walks with Hosmer. They would meet quite often, but only when her stepfather was out on one of his work-related visits to Paris or simply out of town. Their intimacy grew as the young lady's lonely heart latched onto the mystique of this new stranger in her life. The secret affair continues for a few months, until one particular week, when Mr. Windybanks goes away once again on a trip to Bordeaux. Hosmer Angel comes around to their house and finally proposes to Miss Sutherland that they should get married. The deal is struck in haste and Miss Sutherland, swept by her affections for Hosmer, agrees to it with her mother's blessing. The marriage would take place before her stepfather returned from France. Fast forward to the day of the marriage, a Friday at the St. Saviour's Church near King's Cross. Things start out well enough until Miss Sutherland and her mother, upon reaching the church, find out that Hosmer never arrived. And thus, Miss Sutherland concludes her story by saying that she has not seen Mr. Hosmer Angel since that day, and now it falls upon Sherlock to find her missing lover. The entire case has a mysterious set of events attached to it, but for Sherlock, the answer couldn't be simpler. He waits till Miss Sutherland leaves and begins his work. Here are the clues at our disposal. We know that Miss Sutherland and Hosmer Angel often corresponded through letters. These typewritten letters from Hosmer Angel are one of the only pieces of traceable evidence that Sherlock can study, and they're vital to shedding light upon the case of the missing man. How? Asks Dr. Watson, plainly observing his friend work the magics of deduction. Well, Sherlock says, for one thing, we know that Hosmer Angel only met with Miss Sutherland whenever her stepfather, Mr. Windybanks, disappeared on one of his work trips to France. That could be for completely understandable reasons. Maybe Hosmer Angel didn't want to butt into Mrs. Sutherland's life when her stepfather quite explicitly wanted her to steer clear of romance and fraternizing with other people. But, Watson interjects, you sense something else at play, don't you, my friend? Sherlock merely hints at a smile. A day passes after Sherlock and Watson's meeting with Miss Sutherland. The next day, Sherlock invites the girl's stepfather to the Baker Street apartment, and there, Sherlock reveals everything. You see, Sherlock explains to Dr. Watson while a pale and nervous Mr. Windybanks looks on. The small defects in the spelling of the E's and the tail of the R all match the typewritten message Mr. Windybanks sent me earlier this morning while accepting my invitation to come visit. Hence, the typewritten messages from Hosmer Angel and Mr. Windybanks all came from the same set of typewriters. There is no Hosmer Angel. He is Mr. Windybanks. They are both the same person. But why, Watson wonders. Why would Miss Sutherland's own stepfather parade around as her lover in a disguise? Because Mr. Windybanks never wanted Miss Sutherland to fall in love and start her own family. That would mean losing a good source of monetary income. The money she was gifted from her uncle in Auckland was a huge pot of insurance for her stepfather and her mother. Yes, her mother was involved in this ploy as well. At this point, Mr. Windybanks, in fear and rage, tells Sherlock that even if he is guilty, there is no way I am culpable of a crime in the eyes of the law. And he is right. There is no law to put Mr. Windybanks behind bars. And saying that, he runs out of the Baker Street apartment, fearing for the dirty truth that Sherlock had just uncovered. What a tragedy, and what a devilish man, Watson muses. What about Miss Sutherland then? Should we tell her? And Sherlock hangs his head in sympathy, because he knows that no amount of reasoning and logic could convince the pining heart of Miss Sutherland. She was so in love with Hosmer Angel, she so believed in him that for years to come she would not be healed from her wounds. Her heart would bleed, and there was nothing Sherlock, with all his massive stores of wit and intelligence, could do for her. So ends one of Sherlock's most unheard cases. Another tale that enters Watson's journal, and yet this one fills both of them with no satisfaction. The streets of London were still the same under the rising smoke and ash.
Me and my tears are falling, dropping, can't stop this.